Hello, in this video I'm covering the game between Alexander Grischuk and Alireza Firouzja from round 8. The opening was Ruy Lopez. And Alireza chose bishop c5 here. Grischuk continued with c3, trying to push d4. Now black answers with d6 and now d4. And now black doesn't want to surrender the center by taking on d4, because if he takes bishop b6, knight c3, and if black castles, then h3 to stop bishop g4, and white would have full center and black would not be able to equalize properly. So he played bishop b6 here, trying to hold the center, and now bishop e3. If he took on e5 here, then white would capture on e5. If he takes twice and takes on d8, he cannot capture on f7 because e4 is also hanging and f2 might come under attack. So taking on e5 with that idea is not the best, and black is now threatening to go bishop g4 next, which is quite fine for black. Instead he went for bishop e3, trying to hold the center, and now knight e4 is impossible because of bishop d5, double attacking the knights on c6 and e4. So here black just castles, and now knight d2. And black plays rook b8 first, to avoid bishop d5, because he wants to go knight g4 next. If he tried this immediately, then white has bishop g5, and in case of queen e8 to just go away, then h3 would be strong and black would be forced to ruin his pawn structure after knight f6, takes, and it's just a horrible pawn structure. In case of knight f6, then bishop d5 is very strong. If bishop defends by bishop b7, then you take and take on e5, and white is a pawn up. If he takes knight e5 and takes on e4, white can just capture on f6, and if queen f6, then knight d7 is a fork. So if he took on e4, he would be forced to capture on f6 by pawn, but then after knight e4, black's pawn structure is ruined and black is much worse. So to avoid all this, he plays rook b8. Now the threat is knight g4, so white plays h3 here. Rook e8, and now white goes rook e1. Now it's impossible to capture on e4 like this, because after taking on e4, rook takes, white has bishop f7, and if king takes, knight g5, forking the rook and the king, and if king h8, then knight g5 is very strong. Next is queen h5 with checkmating threats, and in case of rook e3 to disconnect the knight and the bishop, white simply captures and threatens to go rook e8 next, and if bishop d7 is played, then just queen h5 and black is simply lost. So this whole ED-CD is not possible in this case to capture on e4, and black plays bishop b7. Now white continues with knight g5, black is defending the f7 pawn by rook e7, and now he's blocking the position, because now he forced black to get to e7, which would be a fine square for the knight, but after d5 he only has a7 or a5. First, black has to capture on e3 to avoid doubling the pawns on the b file. Rook takes, and now he goes to a7, which seems a bit weird. If he tried knight a5 here, then white will just go back to c2, and in case of c6 and b4 to make a weakness on c4, even that would not be so bad for black, because after this and taking on c6, because now the pawn on d5 would be attacked, and after queen e2 to attack this pawn, now black would indirectly defend it by rook c8. After black pushes away the knight from g5, he would have a decent game, because the c4 pawn is not so weak. It can be defended by bishop going to d7 and d6. And also some push in the center might be good in the future, but not immediately. Instead he goes for knight a7. Now white plays a4, trying to open up the queen side. Knight goes to c8, and now he takes and goes c4. And now the idea is that if black takes on c4 to capture with the knight and get to a5 and disable c6, because in this case if black would play c6, now just taking on c6 is nice, and after bishop c6 this pawn is for free, because you cannot capture with pawn because queen hangs on d8, and if you take with the rook then knight f7, and white is going to deliver some discovered check. So after knight c4 white would be slightly better because he has knight a5 next, and he might even play bishop a4 to try to exchange bishops and use the light squares on the queen side. So instead he plays c6 immediately. And now white took, bishop c6, and now cb5. Again opening up this bishop on b3, targeting f7. Black took with the bishop. If rook takes, then white would maybe play rook c3. And now bishop e8 to defend the f7 pawn, but this position looks very passive for black. After rook a8 he would have to go to c5, because if he tries this, then knight e6 is very nice. Now it's a fork on the queen and the rook, so he has to capture. After this, rook c7 takes, bishop e6, and white ends up with the pawn up. So here black is more or less forced to play rook c5 to defend the knight, and once he captures, goes knight c4. Black's position is solid but really passive. And if black exchanges, then this is much more comfortable for white. Instead, Firouzja took with the bishop, and now Grishchuk took on f7, rook f7 and queen b3. And here you cannot go with the bishop to e8 because the rook on b8 hangs. If queen e8, then you can take on f7, queen f7, and go rook b5, pinning this bishop. And because the b8 rook is also critical, black is going to lose some material, because even if you exchange, you don't solve your problems, because the bishop is now double attacked and he's losing the piece. So the only move here is to play d5, after which now Grishchuk has to take on f7 because there's no pin anymore. So he takes, and now he takes on d5. Queen takes. Now probably it was better to keep queens on the board with queen c3, keep some attacking potential. And in case of black going back to g8 to just evacuate his king, then he would capture the pawn, and after queen b7 to just go rook e1. But still, this position is very solid for black because he covers every single entry square so far. Knight on f6 is a good defending piece. Also, knight on c8 does a great job of covering any entries on e7. Now, if knight e6, then white could probably go for rook e7, and after bishop d7 to continue attacking, putting pressure with knight f3. Black's position seems very solid, but white is the one with the initiative and the one which position is easier to play. But probably he chose to play safely, and he took on d5, takes, and now he takes the pawn. Black goes knight f6, knight e4, trying to exchange this good knight for this less active knight. And now he escapes it with this, because if he exchanges it, then after rook e4 he might have ideas like rook a3, rook f3, and there might be some problems for black in that case. So he chose to avoid this for a while until he stabilizes his position, especially this knight on c8. Now white plays rook d5 and bishop c6, targeting the knight also on e4, but now white goes rook d2, because if black takes on e4, again, this exchange is not in the right time. After capturing on d7, knight e7, he would pin the knight, and after rook e8, he would start pushing the pawn, which might be a great asset for white in this endgame. So instead he goes to e5. Now this threat of capturing on e4 is real. White defends it by playing this. He could have also played knight g5 here, And in case of king g6, because king g8 is a checkmate, so to defend the h7 pawn, he has to go to g6. And now white would play something like f4. If black tries knight c4, then rook d4, and now knight b2 would be bad because of rook a6. And now the bishop is under attack. If rook b6, then you take, and rook d6. Take the bishop and it's all over. And if knight e7, then rook e4 is very nice. Trying to destabilize the position by attacking this knight. And what do you do here? If rook b7, then g4 is very strong. Going next rook e6, with black's king being in a checkmating net, that would be pretty much over, because you cannot stop rook e6. If you move the knight to stop the checkmate, then you lose the bishop, so that would be very bad. So in this case, instead of taking on b2 and being greedy, going back to d6 would be nice, and after rook a6 to just go h6 first, and if he takes on c6 to take on g5, and now the b2 pawn is under attack, so b4, after which black takes, and after rook f4, white is still better, still has some chances to win, but it's not easy to break black's position, since he has two knights which can organize some kind of barrier for white's pieces. Instead he went for rook e1 here, and now he takes and goes knight c6. He tries to connect knights with knight from c8 to e7, white goes rook d3, but now knight e7. Now if he takes on b2, then white has this, and if king g8, rook e8, and if king g6, then he loses the knight by rook e6, and he captures on c6. So here he connects his knights by knight e7. Now b3, because now this threat is real, he has to defend his pawn, and now king g8, g3, and now knight f5, heading towards d4, trying to hit this b pawn, king g2, and now knight d4. And now what does white do? If he just defends like rook e3, then black is going to sit and wait, and it's a very tough position to crack. So he chose to enter a rook ending by giving up a rook for two knights. But in return, black got this b pawn, and now we have 3 versus 2 on the same side, which is a draw in theory. But they continued playing. White goes rook d7, trying to get his rook more active, h5, trying to stop white from expanding on the king side without exchanging pawns. So now white goes rook d5, g6 was played to defend, rook d7 again to not allow king to get more active, king f8, and now g4, because there's no way to activate your king, since king f1 leads to h4 and simply liquidating some pawns, and if you take, then I take on h3, and it's a very simple draw. He tries a different way. He tries g4. Now he takes and goes rook a3. He just waits. He's cutting off the king on the 3rd rank, f3, trying to get his king to g3 and f4, and now he's cutting him off on the 4th rank. He tries this, but now he stops king g5, which would be very dangerous for black. He goes back, and now rook b4 again, f4, and now white has a different plan. He wants to somehow cover with checks by playing rook d5, rook e5, and get his king to f3 and somehow to activate, but still this is supposed to be a draw. He gave a check, king f2, rook a3, and now he does this. Rook d5, king f7 was played, rook e5, king f6, and now rook e3. Finally he's covering the 3rd rank, and now his king can go up, but still it's not promising too much. Now black goes rook a4, rook b3, now he gives checks, king e3, rook e1, king f2, and now he goes back to e7. Now he cut the king on the e file, king g3, but now rook a7. And once the king goes to h4, he will attack on a4, or just give a check on h7, which is much easier. Rook b5, and now rook a3, king h4, and again rook a7. And now Grishchuk gave a check, king g7, And if he went for king g5 here, then he would just give a check on a5 and force white to get back to h4, because if he pushes f5, that's elementary draw. So he tried rook e6, king f7, rook d6, and he goes back. Now if he doesn't go king g5, he cannot make any progress, so he tried something else, rook d3, but now king goes back to f6, king g3, rook b7. Again, black is cutting off the king by rook e7, and they're just shuffling around. And after rook e4, he goes here. So in case of king e3, he has plenty of checks, and white cannot escape those checks. So he chose rook d4, but again, he cuts him off on the e-file, rook d3, king f7, and they just go around a bit. And now it's important to get his king to enable his king to get checks. King g5 was played now, hoping for rook b5 to go to h6 and then to challenge the g6 pawn. But after this, black goes king g7, and now black wants to go rook b5 check. White wants to stop it, but he just keeps it there, keeps his rook on the 7th rank, and he waits for white's rook to leave the 5th rank, and in that case he gives a check. That's what happened, rook a6, and now rook c5. This position was played on and on because the Russian team was losing 2-1 because Yesipenko lost to Maxime Lagarde. So Grishuk needed to play this for a win, to play for a while. But after rook c5, he could have gone back, but it would not lead to anywhere, so he wanted to push the pawn. Takes, and now we have a 7th rank defense. Grishuk tried for a couple of more moves, but it was unsuccessful because after f6, king g8, he tried king g6, and now black has a nice resource, rook g7. He went back, and now after rook a7, he went back to g6, and again rook g7, and in this position white took, which is a stalemate. With this draw, France won against Russia 2.5, 1.5, and now I think they're leading. That's it. Thank you so much for watching, and have a nice day.